The vast white ship moved slowly through the darkness of space. Red crosses painted on its hull caught the light from distant stars. The UHMS Sanctuary was the biggest medical ship humans had ever built. It was longer than 3 city blocks and wider than a football field. 2,400 people worked inside its metal walls. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the stars. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been commanding hospital ships for 15 years. In all that time, he had never lost a patient he could save or abandoned anyone who needed help. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Lieutenant Carl Davis sat at the communications station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he monitored dozens of radio channels. Dr. Lisa Grant walked onto the bridge carrying a medical tablet. She was the chief medical officer and the best surgeon on the ship. "How are our patients doing, Doctor?" Morrison asked without turning from the window. "All stable, Captain. The plague survivors from Kepler Station are responding well to treatment. We should be able to transfer them to the medical center on Earth in 3 days." Morrison nodded. The sanctuary had just finished a difficult mission. A plague had broken out on a remote mining colony. Hundreds of people were dying. The local doctors had no cure and no way to treat so many sick people at once. The sanctuary had arrived just in time. Its 12 surgical bays and hundreds of medical beds had saved over 800 lives. "Captain," Davis called from his station. "I'm picking up a distress call." Morrison turned away from the window. "Let me hear it." The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, faint and scared. "This is Research Station Alpha in the Kythera system. We are under attack." "Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple ships. They came out of nowhere. Our orbital platforms are destroyed. We have wounded and our life support is failing. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need immediate help." The transmission ended in a burst of static. Morrison looked at his navigation officer, Amy Foster. She was already working at her station, fingers flying over the controls. "The Kythera system is 42 light years from our current position," Foster reported. "If we push the engines, we can be there in 18 hours. Morrison didn't hesitate. "Set course for Kythera. Maximum speed." Dr. Grant stepped forward. "Captain, what about our current patients?" "We'll take them with us. Ready the medical bays for mass casualties." "This sounds bad." The sanctuary changed direction and picked up speed. Its massive engines pushed the ship faster through space. In the medical sections, doctors and nurses began preparing for whatever they might find. They had done this many times before. When people were dying, the sanctuary came running. 18 hours later, the ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kythera system. What they found was worse than anyone had expected. The research station's orbital platforms were burning. Wrecks, pieces of metal and debris floated everywhere. Small escape pods drifted in the darkness like lost sheep. "My God," Dr. Grant whispered as she looked at the main screen. Morrison's face was hard as stone. "Davis, start broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Let them know we're here. Foster, take us closer to those escape pods. Grant, get your people ready. The next few hours were chaos." The sanctuary's rescue shuttles flew back and forth between the ship and the scattered survivors. Each trip brought back more wounded people. The medical bays filled quickly. Dr. Grant and her team worked without stopping. Burns, broken bones, radiation sickness. They treated everything. Captain Morrison walked through the medical sections, checking on the rescue operation. He stopped beside a bed where a young woman was being treated for severe burns. She grabbed his arm with a bandaged hand. "They came without warning," she gasped. 3 ships, big ones. They didn't even try to talk. They just started shooting. "Who were they?" Morrison asked gently. "Hegemony Coalition. I saw their markings before our communications array was destroyed." Morrison's jaw tightened. "The Hegemony. Coalition was trouble. They were a group of alien races that had been pushing into human space for months. There had been fights at the border, but nothing like this. Attacking a research station was an act of war. "Rest now," Morrison told the woman. "You're safe." He was walking back to the bridge when alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Davis's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have contacts approaching." Morrison ran to the bridge. On the main screen, 3 sleek ships were moving toward them. They were dark and angular, built for war, not peace. Coalition ships. "They're hailing us, Captain," Davis reported. "Put them through." The screen flickered and showed the bridge of the lead coalition ship. The alien commander was tall and thin with gray skin and yellow eyes. When he spoke, his voice was cold and harsh. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vextar of the Hegemony Coalition. You will surrender the survivors you have collected and submit to inspection. You have 5 minutes to comply." Morrison stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "This is Captain Jack Morrison of the UHMS Sanctuary. We are a hospital ship engaged in lawful rescue operations. The people aboard this vessel are patients under medical care. We will not surrender them to anyone." The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your soft species hides behind treaties and medical symbols. We care nothing for your laws. You evolved on a weak world and think mercy makes you strong. It makes you prey. We are protected under galactic medical treaties," Morrison said calmly. "Any attack on this vessel would be a war crime. War crimes are for those who lose wars. Human, your people avoid conflict at any cost. You send hospital ships instead of warships because you fear to fight. We have studied you. You are weak." The 3 coalition ships moved into attack formation. Their weapon systems began charging. Energy readings spiked on the sanctuary's sensors. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was calm and ready. Dr. Grant had come up from the medical bay and stood beside him. Chief Engineer Pete Collins was at his station, monitoring the ship's systems. Everyone knew what was coming. "Commander Vextar," Morrison said. His voice still calm but with something harder underneath. "You have made a serious mistake. This is your last chance to withdraw." The alien's yellow eyes glowed with amusement. "Threats from a hospital ship? Your medical vessel has no weapons. You cannot even defend yourselves. 5 minutes, human. Then we take what we want and leave your ship as wreckage." The transmission ended. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Morrison turned to his crew. "Davis, send a message on the emergency. Military channel, priority 1. Let them know our situation." "Already done, Captain. Admiral Parker's fleet is 6 hours out." Morrison nodded slowly. 6 hours is a long time. "Foster, all stop. Hold position here." Dr. Grant looked at him with concern. "Jack, we can't fight 3 warships." Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent his life in dangerous places and learned hard lessons about survival. "Doctor, please return to your patients. Make sure they're secure." As she left the bridge, Morrison looked out at the 3 coalition ships moving closer. They thought they knew humans. They thought the sanctuary was helpless because it was a medical ship. They were about to learn something important about the human race. Humans didn't build hospital ships because they were weak. They built them because sometimes the best way to save lives was to be ready to take them. The sanctuary was indeed a hospital ship, filled with doctors and nurses dedicated to healing. But it was also something else, something the coalition would discover very soon. The wolf was about to shed its sheep's clothing. The 3 coalition ships moved closer to the sanctuary. Their dark hulls reflected no light as they positioned themselves around the medical vessel. Commander Vextar watched from his bridge as his ships formed an attack triangle. The human hospital ship sat motionless in the center, helpless as a wounded animal. "Weapons charged and ready, Commander," reported his tactical officer, a reptilian creature with sharp claws and cold eyes. "Good. Begin the final approach. These humans will learn what happens when they interfere with Coalition business." On the Sanctuary's bridge, Captain Morrison watched the enemy ships close in. His face showed no fear, only calm attention. Lieutenant Davis monitored the communications channels while Amy Foster tracked the Coalition ships on her sensors. "They're moving into boarding range, Captain," Foster reported. "Estimate 2 minutes until they're close enough to dock with us." Morrison nodded. "Dr. Grant, are all patients secure?" Dr. Grant's voice came through the intercom from the medical bay. "All patients are strapped in and ready for emergency maneuvers. Medical equipment is locked down." "Good. All hands prepare for defensive operations." Throughout the ship, something changed. The change was subtle at first. Emergency lighting shifted from white to a soft red glow. Blast doors that had been standing open now closed with solid metallic sounds. The gentle hum of medical equipment continued, but underneath it was something else, the deeper sound of powerful machinery coming online. Chief Engineer Pete Collins stood at his station in the engine room. His hands moved over controls that most people never noticed. Hidden panels slid open, revealing systems that didn't appear on any medical ship blueprints. Massive power conduits that had been feeding the hospital equipment began routing energy somewhere else. "All systems green, Captain," Collins reported. "Ready when you are." In the medical bays, the doctors and nurses continued their work, but their movements had changed. They worked with the same care and skill, but now there was something different in how they moved, more precise, more focused. Like soldiers preparing for battle, Dr. Grant checked the restraint systems on every medical bed. Her staff moved through practiced routines they had drilled many times, but hoped never to use. Each doctor was fully trained in trauma medicine. Each nurse knew how to work during combat situations. They were healers, but they were also military personnel. The Coalition ships were now close enough that their crews could see inside the Sanctuary's viewports. Commander Vextar smiled as he looked at the massive white ship. Soon it would be his prize. "Human vessel," he transmitted. "This is your final warning. Surrender now or face destruction." Captain Morrison stepped forward to the communication station. When he spoke, his voice carried across all frequencies so every ship in the area could hear him clearly. "Coalition vessels, this is Captain Jack Morrison. You are threatening a medical vessel engaged in lawful rescue operations. You have ignored multiple warnings about our protected status under galactic law. You have exactly 30 seconds to withdraw from this area." Commander Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge crew. "Impossible. Our intelligence confirms this vessel has no combat ability. It is a pure medical ship with no weapons." His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the medical ship. The power readings are much higher than expected." "Medical equipment requires power," Vextar said dismissively. "Do not be fooled by their machines." But the tactical officer's expression grew more worried. "Sir, these readings, they match the energy signature of weapon systems. Heavy ones." For the first time, Commander Vextar felt a flicker of doubt. He looked more carefully at the human ship. It was huge, larger than most battle cruisers. The hull was thick and reinforced. Those could be armor plates, not just structural panels. 20 seconds. Captain Morrison announced calmly. On the Sanctuary, hidden weapon ports began to iris open along the hull. Systems that had been disguised as medical scanners and communications arrays swiveled toward the Coalition ships. The transformation was smooth and silent, like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Lieutenant Davis received a priority transmission on an encrypted military channel. The message was brief but important. Sanctuary, this is Admiral Kate Parker. Aboard the UHS Retribution. We are tracking your situation. Hold your position. Help is coming. Instead of relief, Captain Morrison's expression hardened. He had hoped the coalition would withdraw peacefully. Now they would learn a harder lesson. All hands, this is the captain, Morrison announced over the ship's intercom. Prepare for combat operations. Medical teams, secure all patients. Engineering. Bring all defensive systems online. This is not a drill. Throughout the ship, the crew moved with sudden purpose. In the medical bays, patients were moved to specially reinforced sections. Equipment that looked like medical devices revealed their true function. Advanced sensors that could track internal injuries could also track incoming missiles. Surgical tools designed for precision work were stored safely away as the rooms prepared. For battle damage, Chief Engineer Collins brought the main reactors to full power. The same fusion plants that ran the medical equipment could also power weapons that could punch holes through enemy warships. The sanctuary had been designed from the beginning to operate in dangerous areas. Sometimes the best medicine was removing the danger completely. 10 seconds, Morrison announced. Commander Vextar stared at his displays in growing alarm. The energy readings from the human ship were now clearly showing weapon signatures. Multiple missile tubes, particle beam arrays, and something else. Something much larger. This is impossible, he whispered. It's supposed to be a hospital ship. His tactical officer's voice was tight with fear. Commander, those are military-grade weapon systems. This isn't a medical vessel, it's a warship. Disguised as one. But our intelligence reports. We're wrong, sir. We need to withdraw immediately. But Commander Vextar's pride would not let him back down. The Hegemony Coalition had built its reputation on never retreating from weaker opponents. To run from a single human ship would bring shame to his entire clan. All ships, attack formation. If they want to fight, we'll show them what real warriors can do. 5 seconds, Morrison announced. On the Coalition ships, weapons powered up to full charge. Missile tubes loaded with high-explosive warheads. Energy cannons that could melt. Through starship armor prepared to fire. 3 warships against 1 medical vessel should have been an easy victory. But as the countdown reached 0, the truth about the UHMS Sanctuary became clear. The ship that had seemed so helpless was anything but weak. Hidden weapon ports opened. Like deadly flowers blooming in space. Targeting systems locked onto the Coalition vessels with the precision of surgical instruments. Doctor. Grant looked up from her patient as she felt the ship's artificial gravity fluctuate slightly. Through the medical bay's reinforced viewport, she could see energy building around weapon emplacements that definitely were not in any medical manual. Time's up, Captain Morrison said quietly. The first shots came from the Coalition ships. Bright. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space toward the sanctuary. It looked like the medical ship would be destroyed in the opening. Seconds of the battle. Then, the sanctuary's true nature revealed itself. Point defense systems that had been hidden as communications arrays opened fire. Streams of projectiles filled the space around the ship, intercepting every incoming missile. Energy shields that were far stronger than any hospital ship should possess absorbed the enemy fire without even flickering. Return fire, Morrison ordered calmly. All batteries. The space around the sanctuary lit up like deadly fireworks as the wolf finally showed its teeth. The battle began with a deadly light show. Energy beams from the Coalition ships struck the sanctuary's shields and scattered like water hitting a rock. The hospital ship's defensive barriers held firm against the attack. What had looked like an easy target was proving to be anything but helpless. Commander. Vextar watched his weapon's fire bounce harmlessly off the human ship. His tactical officer's face had gone pale with fear. Commander, their shields are military grade. Our weapons are barely scratching them, the officer reported. This ship has armor plating thicker than a battle cruiser. Impossible, Vextar snarled. It's a medical vessel. Our intelligence confirmed it. Our intelligence was wrong, sir. This is a warship. The Sanctuary's response was swift and precise. Particle beam cannons that had been hidden beneath medical scanner housings swiveled toward the nearest Coalition ship. When they fired, the beams cut through space like surgical knives. The first shot struck the Coalition vessel's shields and overloaded them instantly. Captain, Morrison stood calmly on his bridge as his ship fought back. Target their weapon systems first. We want to disable, not destroy if possible. Acknowledged. Captain, replied his weapons officer, a quiet woman named Julie Webb, who had been disguised as a medical technician. Just minutes before, the Sanctuary's guns fired again. This time the beams struck the Coalition ship's weapon mounts directly. Explosions bloomed along the alien vessel's hull as its guns were destroyed one by one. The ship was still intact but no longer able to fight back. Dr. Grant continued working in the medical bay as the battle raged outside. The reinforced walls protected her patients from the violence, but she could feel each impact as enemy fire struck the ship's shields. Her hands never shook as she treated a wounded researcher from the space station. Doctor, are we going to be okay? Asked one of the patients, a young man with bandaged burns on his arms. Yes, Grant said with complete confidence. We're in good hands. Through the medical bay's viewport, she could see the second Coalition ship moving to attack from a different angle. Its weapons charged up for another strike against the Sanctuary. Chief Engineer Pete Collins monitored the ship's power systems from his station in the engine room. The massive reactors that powered the medical equipment were now feeding energy to weapons and shields. Every system was running at peak efficiency. Captain, all systems operating normally. Weapons at full power, shields at maximum strength, Collins reported. Good work, Pete. How long can we maintain this? As long as you need, sir. We've got power to spare. The second Coalition ship opened fire with everything it had. Missiles and energy beams streaked toward the Sanctuary from multiple directions. The ship's point defense systems responded immediately. Streams of projectiles filled space around the medical vessel, destroying every incoming missile before it could reach the hull. The energy beams that got through struck the shields and were absorbed harmlessly. The Sanctuary had been built to operate in the most dangerous areas of space. Its defensive systems could handle anything the Coalition ships could throw at it. Morrison watched the tactical display as his ship maneuvered around the attacking vessels. The Sanctuary was huge, but it moved with surprising grace. The same advanced engines that let it reach disaster areas quickly also made it surprisingly agile in combat. Navigation, bring us around to heading 270. Let's give them a broadside they won't forget. Amy Foster's hands flew over her controls as she guided the massive ship through a turning maneuver that would have been impossible for a normal medical vessel. The Sanctuary rotated slowly, bringing its most powerful weapons to bear on the Coalition ships. Weapons free, Morrison ordered. Hit them hard. The Sanctuary's main battery opened fire. 6 heavy particle cannons fired in sequence, their beams lighting up space like artificial lightning. The shots struck the second Coalition ship and tore through its shields like they were made of paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the alien vessel's hull as its armor melted under the assault. Commander Vextar watched in horror as his second ship was crippled in a matter of seconds. The human medical vessel was outgunning his warships with ridiculous ease. Everything he thought he knew about human capabilities was wrong. All ships, concentrate fire on their medical bays, he ordered desperately. If we can threaten their patients, they might surrender. It was the worst mistake he could have made. The Coalition ships turned their weapons toward the sections of the Sanctuary that housed the wounded survivors from the research station. Their targeting systems locked onto the medical facilities. Captain Morrison's expression went from professional calm to something much colder. His voice cut across the bridge like a blade. "They're targeting the medical bays. All weapons free. Fire authorization. Take them down." The change in the sanctuary's response was immediate and terrible. Before, the ship had been fighting defensively, trying to disable rather than destroy. Now it fought with the full fury of warriors protecting the helpless. Missile tubes that had been disguised as emergency supply ports opened along the ship's hull. Dozens of projectiles launched toward the coalition vessels. These weren't normal ship-to-ship missiles. They were medical supply rockets converted into guided munitions, each one carrying enough explosive power to crack a starship's hull. The third coalition ship, which had been trying to maneuver around to the sanctuary's blind spot, suddenly found itself under attack from multiple directions. The converted medical missiles struck its hull in a coordinated barrage. The alien ship's armor cracked and atmosphere began venting into space. Dr. Grant felt the ship shake as its weapons fired at maximum rate. One of her patients, an elderly scientist from the research station, looked up at her with worried eyes. "They're trying to hurt us, aren't they?" he asked. "They tried," Grant replied calmly. "But we don't let anyone hurt our patients. That's a promise we keep." Lieutenant Davis monitored the communications channels as the battle continued. He picked up panicked transmissions from the coalition ships as they realized how badly they had underestimated their opponent. "Captain, I'm intercepting coalition communications. They're calling for reinforcements and trying to identify our ship type. They still don't understand what we are." Morrison nodded grimly. "Let them wonder. Continue defensive operations." The battle was turning into a rout. The first coalition ship was drifting helplessly with its weapons destroyed. The second ship was venting atmosphere and trying to retreat. The third ship was taking heavy damage from the sanctuary's missile barrage. But Commander Vextar wasn't finished yet. In desperation, he ordered his remaining functional ship to ram the human vessel. If he couldn't defeat them with weapons, he would try to destroy them both in a collision. "All power to engines," he screamed at his crew. "We'll show these humans what true warriors die like." His ship accelerated toward the sanctuary at maximum speed. The collision would destroy both vessels and kill everyone aboard. It was a desperate act of spite from a commander who couldn't accept defeat. "Captain," Morrison watched the coalition ship approaching on a collision course. His tactical officer called out impact time. 30 seconds to collision, Captain." "Should we evade?" Morrison looked at the medical bays full of wounded patients. Moving the ship suddenly could injure them further. The sanctuary was built to protect the helpless, not run from danger. "Negative. Hold position. All hands, brace for impact." But the collision never came. At the last second, space around the sanctuary filled with new energy signatures. 6 human warships dropped out of hyperspace with perfect timing. Admiral Kate Parker's fleet had arrived. The lead ship, the UHS Retribution, placed itself directly between the coalition vessel and the sanctuary. Its massive bulk absorbed the ramming attack, shields flaring as the alien ship struck them harmlessly. "This is Admiral Parker," came the transmission. "Sorry we're late to the party, Captain Morrison. Looks like you had everything under control." Morrison smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Just another day at the office, Admiral. We've got wounded coalition personnel who need medical attention." Even in victory, the sanctuary remained true to its purpose. The Wolf had shown its teeth, but underneath it was still a healer. Admiral Kate Parker's fleet surrounded the coalition ships like a pack of wolves. The 6 human warships moved with practiced precision, their weapons trained on the damaged alien vessels. The UHS Retribution, a massive dreadnought, floated between the coalition command ship and the sanctuary. After blocking the ramming attack, Commander Vextar stared at his main screen in shock. His ship had struck the human dreadnought's shields and bounced off like a toy. The impact had damaged his engines and left his vessel drifting helplessly. Around him, his bridge crew looked defeated and scared. "Commander," his tactical officer whispered, "we're completely surrounded. Our weapons are destroyed, engines are offline, and we're taking casualties from hull breaches." Vextar said nothing. Everything he had believed about humans was wrong. They weren't weak prey species hiding behind medical symbols. They were predators who chose to heal instead of hunt, but they could still kill when necessary. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to the entire area. His voice was calm and professional, but there was steel underneath. "Coalition. Vessels, this is Captain Morrison. Your attack on a protected medical vessel constitutes a war crime under galactic law. Surrender immediately and prepare to receive medical assistance." The last words shocked everyone listening. Even after being attacked, the humans were offering medical help to their enemies. Admiral Parker's voice joined the transmission. "Coalition Commander, this is Admiral Parker of the United Human Fleet. You have 10 seconds to surrender before we classify you as a hostile threat to medical operations." Commander Vextar looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was wounded. His ship was dying around him. The smart choice was obvious, but his pride fought against it. "Sir," his tactical officer urged, "we have to surrender. If we don't, they'll destroy us completely." Through his viewport, Vextar could see the human medical ship. It was huge and white with red crosses painted on its hull. It looked peaceful and harmless, but he had seen what it could do when threatened. The sanctuary was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and he had been foolish enough to attack the flock it protected. "All coalition ships," Vextar said finally, "cease fire and surrender. Lower your shields and prepare for boarding." The response from the human ships was immediate, but not what he expected. Instead of armed Marines, the first shuttles to approach carried medical teams. Dr. Grant's voice came over the radio as her medical shuttle docked with his ship. "Coalition vessel, this is Dr. Lisa Grant from the UHMS Sanctuary. We're coming aboard to treat your wounded. Do not be afraid. We're here to help." Vextar watched in amazement as human doctors and nurses boarded his ship. They carried medical supplies and portable equipment. They moved through his corridors treating injured coalition soldiers with the same care they would show their own people. Dr. Grant found Vextar on his bridge, bleeding from a head wound. She knelt beside him with a medical scanner and began treating his injuries without hesitation. "Why?" Vextar asked as she cleaned his wound. "We attacked you. We tried to kill your patients. Why do you help us?" Grant looked into his yellow eyes with steady compassion. "Because you're hurt, and I'm a doctor. That's all that matters right now." On the sanctuary, the medical bays were filling with both human and alien patients. The coalition wounded were placed in beds right next to the research station survivors they had tried to capture. Chief Medical Officer Grant had made it clear that all patients received the same standard of care, regardless of which side they had fought on. A young coalition soldier named Crickstar lay in a medical bed with his arm in a healing brace. In the bed next to him was a human researcher who had been wounded in the original attack on the space station. The two beings looked at each other uncertainly. "You saved my life," Crickstar said quietly to the human researcher. "Your doctor. She fixed my broken bones even though I was your enemy." The researcher, a middle-aged woman named Ellen Hayes, smiled weakly. "That's what humans do. We fight when we have to, but we heal whenever we can. I don't understand. On my world, enemies are killed or left to die. Showing mercy is seen as weakness." Ellen turned to look at him more directly. "Maybe that's why you lost this fight. You see mercy as weakness, but we see it as strength. It takes more courage to heal than to kill." Captain Morrison walked through the medical bays, checking on all the patients. He stopped beside beds containing Coalition soldiers and spoke with them just as kindly as he did with the human survivors. This was perhaps the most alien thing about humans from the Coalition perspective, their willingness to care for anyone who needed help. One Coalition officer, a reptilian female named Siskatar, grabbed Morrison's sleeve as he passed her bed. "Captain," she said in broken English, "my commander. He said humans were weak because you build hospital ships instead of pure warships. But your hospital ship defeated 3 of our battle cruisers. How is this possible?" Morrison sat down beside her bed. His expression was patient, like a teacher explaining something important to a student. "We don't build hospital ships because we're weak," he said quietly. "We build them because we're strong enough to protect the people who need protection. Your commander made a mistake. He thought mercy meant weakness. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose to heal instead of harm. But you have weapons, big weapons, hidden weapons." Morrison nodded. "Yes, we do. Because sometimes the only way to create a safe place for healing is to be ready to fight for it. We don't look for wars, but we won't run from them either." Admiral Parker boarded the sanctuary to meet with Captain Morrison. The 2 officers stood in the ship's command center, looking out at the damaged Coalition vessels being tended to by human medical teams. "Quite a mess out here, Jack," Parker said. "Command is going to want a full report on this incident. The Coalition forces attacked a research station, then threatened a medical vessel engaged in rescue operations," Morrison replied. "We defended ourselves and our patients. End of story. The political situation is more complicated than that. This could escalate into a full war." Morrison's expression hardened. "Then maybe the Coalition will learn something important about humans. We prefer to heal, but we're very good at fighting when we have to be." Parker nodded and looked around the medical bay. Human and alien wounded were being treated side by side. "This is going to change things, you know. Word of this battle will spread through Coalition space. They thought they understood us. What will they think now? That humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because we're violent, but because we're not. We could have wiped out those Coalition ships completely, but instead we're treating their wounded. That kind of strength scares people who only understand force." In the Coalition ships, word was already spreading about what had happened. Survivors told stories of human doctors who treated enemy wounded without question. They spoke of a hospital ship that fought like a warship but still held true to its healing mission. Commander Vextar, his head bandaged and his pride broken, sent a message to Coalition Command. His report would change how the hegemony viewed humanity forever. "This is Commander Vextar reporting on the engagement at Kythera System," he said into his recorder. "Our intelligence about human capabilities was completely wrong. They are not weak, they are not prey. They are apex predators who have chosen to become healers, but they remember how to hunt." The message continued as medical shuttles moved between the ships, carrying Coalition wounded to the sanctuary's advanced medical facilities. The Deathworlders had responded to an attack on their hospital ship, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. 3 days later, the sanctuary drifted peacefully through space on its way to the nearest medical station. The massive white ship looked calm and quiet again, its red crosses bright against the hull. Inside its medical bays, human and alien, patients recovered side by side. Dr. Lisa Grant walked through the recovery wards, checking on her patients. The Coalition soldiers were healing well. Their wounds were mending, and many had started talking with the human survivors they had originally tried to capture. Fear was slowly being replaced by curiosity and respect. She stopped beside the bed of Commander Vextar. The alien commander's head wound had healed completely, but his pride was still damaged. He stared out the viewport at the stars, lost in thought. "How are you feeling today, Commander?" Grant asked as she checked his medical chart. "Confused," Vextar replied honestly. Everything I thought I knew about your species was wrong. We believed humans were weak because you avoided direct confrontation. We thought you built hospital ships because you were afraid to build warships. Grant sat down in the chair beside his bed. What do you think now? Now I think we understand nothing about humans at all. Your hospital ship defeated 3 of our warships. But instead of celebrating victory, you treated our wounded. Instead of taking prisoners, you made us your patients. That's because we don't see you as enemies anymore, Grant explained. The fight is over. Now you're just people who need medical care. Vextar shook his head in amazement. On my world, enemies remain enemies until death. To show mercy is to invite future attacks. Maybe that's why your world has so many wars, Grant said gently. Sometimes the best way to end a fight is to show your enemy that you're strong enough to choose peace. Across the medical bay, the young coalition soldier Crickstar was learning to walk again with the help of a human physical therapist. His broken bones had healed, but the therapy was helping him regain full strength. The therapist, a cheerful woman named Maria Santos, encouraged him with patient words. You're doing great, Crickstar. Just a few more steps and we'll be done for today. Thank you, Maria, the young alien replied. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you choose to work on a hospital ship? Surely there are safer jobs on your home world. Maria smiled as they continued walking slowly around the therapy area. Because this is where I'm needed most. People get hurt in dangerous places far from home. Someone has to be there to help them, but you could have been killed in the battle. We were shooting at your ship. Yes, but that's the risk we accept. We can't help people if we're not willing to go where the danger is. Crickstar thought about this as they finished the therapy session. He was beginning to understand something important about humans. They didn't avoid danger because they were weak. They went toward danger because they were strong enough to help others. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge, reviewing reports from his crew. The sanctuary had taken minor damage during the battle, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. More importantly, all patients were stable and recovering well. Lieutenant Carl Davis approached with a communication tablet. Captain, we're receiving multiple messages from Coalition Space. Word about the battle is spreading quickly. Morrison read through the messages. Some were angry demands for the return of Coalition prisoners. Others were curious inquiries about human medical capabilities. A few were requests for humanitarian assistance from Coalition worlds facing their own medical emergencies. Interesting, Morrison said. It seems our little encounter has changed some minds. Admiral Kate Parker's fleet was escorting the sanctuary to the medical station where the patients would be transferred to long-term care facilities. Parker herself was aboard the hospital ship, meeting with the Coalition wounded to better understand the political situation. She found Commander Vextar in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. The alien commander stood when she entered, showing the respect one military officer gives another. Commander, Parker said, I understand you'll be released once we reach the medical station. Yes, Admiral. Your Captain Morrison has made arrangements for my return to Coalition space, along with my surviving crew members. What will you tell your superiors about what happened here? Vextar was quiet for a long moment. The truth. That we attacked what we thought was a helpless medical ship and discovered it was crewed by the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Dangerous how? Not because you're violent, Admiral. Because you're not. We understand violence. We know how to fight enemies who want to destroy us. But how do you fight people who defeat you in battle and then heal your wounds? How do you hate someone who saves your life? Parker nodded slowly. You don't. That's the point. Is that why you build ships like the Sanctuary? To make enemies into friends? We build ships like the Sanctuary because people get hurt, and someone needs to help them. The fact that it sometimes turns enemies into friends is just a bonus. 2 days later, the sanctuary arrived at the medical station orbiting the planet New Geneva. The facility was one of the largest medical centers in human space, with advanced trauma units and rehabilitation facilities. Both human and alien patients would receive the best possible care there. As the patients were transferred from the ship to the station, something remarkable happened. The Coalition soldiers insisted on saying goodbye to the human medical staff who had treated them. Many exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. Crickstar found Dr. Grant before he was transferred to the station. "Doctor, I want to thank you for everything. Not just for healing my injuries, but for showing me something I never understood before." "What's that?" Grant asked. "That strength and kindness can exist in the same person. On my world, we think you must choose one or the other, but humans have both." Grant smiled and shook his hand. "Maybe you can teach that lesson to others when you return home." "I will try, but I have one more question. Will you accept Coalition wounded if we ask for help in the future?" "Of course. Medical emergencies don't care about politics. If you need help, call us." Commander Vextar was the last to leave the sanctuary. Captain Morrison personally escorted him to the docking bay where a Coalition transport waited to take him home. "Captain," Vextar said as they walked, "I owe you an apology. We attacked your ship based on false assumptions about your people." "Apology accepted, Commander. But I hope you've learned something from this experience." "I have learned that humans are not the weak prey species we thought you were. You are predators who chose to become healers. That makes you more dangerous than any warrior race in the galaxy." Morrison smiled. "Dangerous to those who threaten the innocent, maybe. But we prefer to be healers. It's more satisfying to save lives than to take them." As Vextar boarded his transport, he turned back one last time. "Captain, when word of this spreads through Coalition space, there will be changes. Some will want revenge. Others will want to understand humans better. And you, Commander, what will you want?" "Peace," Vextar said simply. "Your people have shown me that peace is not weakness. It's the choice made by those strong enough to enforce it." The transport departed, carrying the Coalition survivors back to their space. But they took with them something more valuable than just their lives. They carried a new understanding of what humanity really represented in the galaxy. Weeks later, the first Coalition medical exchange request arrived at human headquarters. They wanted to learn human medical techniques and share their own knowledge. It was the beginning of a new relationship between the two peoples. Dr. Grant stood in the sanctuary's medical bay, looking out at the stars as the ship moved on to its next mission. The beds around her were ready for new patients, the equipment prepared for whatever emergency might come. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Hands that could heal and hearts brave enough to go wherever healing was needed. They were wolves who chose to be shepherds, predators who protected the weak, warriors who fought for peace. The Deathworlders had responded to a threat against their hospital ship, and the galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can encounter is mercy backed by strength. In the end, they had thought it was just a hospital ship. They were right. It was also so much more.